All right, everyone, thank you for joining me today. I know that there is a talk going on in another room that has sexy in the title, so I'm glad y'all chose to join me today. So this talk is Lost in Translation. I've also been calling it Can You Hear Me? And it's about communicating security outside of your security teams. The alternate title to this talk that is less HR approved is You Have to Talk to People, Get Over It. Let that sit with you for a second. Also, my Twitter is on the bottom of every slide if y'all want to harass me and send me cat pictures. I highly recommend it. So a little bit of audience participation time. I'm going to ask you to raise your hands for me. It's early, we can all do that. So I want to know how many security people are in the room. You identify as InfoSec only. Cool, mostly. Okay, how about managers? All right, I see you guys. How about developers? Yes, okay, cool. So there's some overlap there, cool. All right. So I try to do that so I get a little bit of a read of the room because this talk is about developers for security people. So developers, I'm speaking for all of you today. You're welcome. So a little bit about me, because you shared, I'm gonna share. I'm a security engineer at Remitly. It's a startup out in Seattle, but I live in Minneapolis. I have no street cred in Austin, but hopefully y'all welcome me with Southern hospitality anyway. My previous background kind of comes from product security engineering and kind of a DevOps-y background. I was a build guy for a while. This is my cat, Pseudo. She is a constant reminder that computers own me, because when I tell her to do things and that she doesn't do them, it is humbling. And then I sometimes have over 2 legs, and if y'all are wondering what that means, I use a cane sometimes. So y'all might see that, but I like to joke that I am a tripod. So I moved from development to security. And when I was moving from development to security, I really wasn't sure what I was doing. I wasn't sure what kind of hot mess I was getting myself into. But I know I liked CTFs, and I was a CTF junkie, and I liked lockpicking, and I liked getting into trouble. So I, at one point, met Ian Coldwater at work, and Ian said, "Did you know you could get paid for breaking things?" And suddenly my entire life made sense, and I was like, I need to switch into security now. So when I switched from development to security, it kind of went down the wavy path of development to product security to InfoSec proper. I asked myself, what makes a good one? So naturally, I Googled it. I wasn't sure what else to do. So I asked Google, what makes a good security engineer? I think that was my exact search query. And the first article that I found had this as an answer, which was build and maintain IT security solutions for an organization, which I think we can all kind of agree is a fair definition of things that we do, if not directly, then indirectly. Maybe we support the solutions, but in some form we do it. But what this article neglected to say is that after this immediate definition, the list I got of other things I had to be able to do as a security engineer looked like this. And that was terrifying. I didn't know what to do with that. I blanked out and I was like, oh man, I don't know what to do. So there was this. No one mentioned on-call? That was part of it too. That's not something I'd ever done before, so that was cool. So moving into security, I noticed a couple different things about differences in culture, differences in how many weirdos I'll find, and I love security for it. But specifically, I found that in an ideal world, security would kind of look like this, where we are a cat in a box, and we never have to go outside of our box, and we have all of our systems and our keys and our certs, and we never really have to go outside of it. We can sit very happy in our systems, and we're fine. And then sometimes it looks like this, where we have the graybeards in the box, that's researchers, and then everyone is kind of orbiting around researchers, hoping they're not going to drop a 0-day on us. And then other times it looks like this, where I'm sure no one's felt this pain before, but that's security in a budget box. But actually, security is varied and different. We all know that. So security, we're a cat in a box. Then we also have people we have to interface with, like management. How about sales? HR? Marketing? And I feel like I am forgetting someone. It's the looming devs. These are the people most likely to break all of your stuff. So, this talk is about developers. What developers like, what developers don't like, kind of how we can communicate better with them, how we can work better with them. So developer has joined the battle. I'm representing them today. So let's talk about them a little bit. Let's break it down. What do developers like and what don't they like? This probably looks similar to all of y'all, if any of you practice Scrum. A lot of developers like delivering on deadlines. They like feeling like they've gotten something done on time. That's kind of human. Other things like creating helpful features, making users happy, seeing the impact of something they built. A lot of users like to see, a lot of users that are happy make developers happy. That's kind of how that works. Things developers are not a fan of are things like managing sprint points and velocity. How many of y'all have done Scrum before? Okay, cool. When I asked this at B-Sides, I got like 6 hands in a full room. And I was like, y'all need to look that up immediately. Pivoting off of different projects is real. Again, I'm sure no one in this room has felt that before. You're working on something for 2 weeks and someone goes, you're working on that now. Poor communication upwards and downwards. They might get really poor specifications for something they're trying to build. And then fixing that off by one bug. That's been ruining their lives for the past week. Ask me how I know that pain. So inevitably, when security and developers will have friction, because they are struggling with these different things that they like and don't like, and security is telling them go slower while they are being told go fast and break things. Inevitably, there will be someone in the industry that looks like this, that will say, let's do DevSecOps. It's a buzzword, I think it's this hot new thing, and I want to do it. And this is going to fix all of our problems. So, hate to burst that bubble, but it often looks like this in practice, where you have the entire tech industry throwing a red teamer onto a dev team and going, this is DevSecOps, right? It's not. Hate to break that bubble. So DevSecOps won't save you. That is a fact that I want to say right now. Because DevSecOps, if you just kind of like throw your security team at your developers and go make it work, implies that all of those pieces were working together immediately beforehand. So if you throw those pieces together and there is friction, there's misaligned goals, they aren't going for the same thing, they don't know how to talk to each other, DevSecOps as a practice might save you eventually, but it's definitely not going to do it in the first place. So it won't solve all your problems, and that's a nope cap on the bottom. So we have to meet halfway. And that is really hard, because security and developers often have conflicting goals. So how do we do that? I have kind of 3 principles I operate off personally. They kind of align with the soft skills panel, if anyone was at that last night. And I'm going to talk about those today. So the first one is accessibility. So this is not the accessibility I usually talk about, because I yell a lot about being disabled. But this accessibility is kind of, as an organization, as a security organization in your company, where are you? Can people talk to you? So what are some examples of this? You see multiple contact points. This can be emails, Slack, this can be calling, this can be where are you in the building. If you're fully remote, can people contact you via like video call? Maybe. This basically like, can people talk to you? Do developers know you exist? That's a question. The presence in the organization is huge. Do people know what tools you use? They might know you break their builds, but have they met you personally? So SLAs for communication are also something that's incredibly important to me. If you have a reliable time in which someone will respond to your security questions, they worry less about having a security problem because they know it'll get fixed in a certain amount of time, or at least addressed. And then interaction and engagement with teams. If you're not talking to your teams, you are missing a breadth of knowledge about your organization that you're not going to get otherwise, because those people will hide things from you. So if we're being accessible and we're talking to our teams, the other half of this is that we have to be empathetic. We have to put ourselves in their shoes and try and understand what they're talking about. And I love this because it's Tin Man, but he was empathetic before he got a heart. So in empathy, I can't stand up here and tell all of you that you have to be empathetic. That is a choice you have to make yourself. But what I can tell you is that as a practice, It isn't a one-time thing, and it's something you're going to be doing every day. So practicing empathy is a lot of asking why. If your developers have pushed creds to AWS 7 times, and it's killing you, and you're like, why are you doing this? Ask them why they're doing it. Because they might tell you a whole bunch of stuff out their pipeline you didn't know. Maybe they need it to get around a Jenkins build. Maybe they didn't know they were doing it. That's entirely possible. My personal vendetta in this talk is stop using just, because it kills me. So when people say, just put it behind a proxy, just throw a cert on it, throw off at it. What? The amount of work that goes behind all of those things, especially if you've never done that, is wild. You are invalidating all of the work that the developer has to do in that context. So if you say, just do this thing, it implies, one, that work isn't going to be that hard, and we all know that's a lie. And then the other one is that it's a one-time thing. So when you say, just put it behind a proxy, that implies like, I just have to do this one time, then I'll be fine. That's not true for most cases with developers. They often have to do things multiple times in the future. So stop using just, personal vendetta, enforcing it on all of you today. Maybe you'll stop doing it. The last one is shadow your developers. If you sit with your developers and you sit with them in their pipelines and you sit with them and what they do on a daily basis, awesome, cool, please do that forever, because they will hide things from you, like I said before, but this time they can't hide it because you're staring at their screen. So you can see what they have to go through their builds, you can see what they have to do to push things to master, and that will change how you approach your security. Because then you can see, okay, they need keys in this format so that they don't push them to AWS or to GitHub anymore. Cool. And the last one, now that we are being accessible and empathetic, we're talking to people, is not being their enemy. And so someone actually, when I gave this talk at B-Sides, was like, that's funny because it's like security's choking out the developers. Like, that's what I see. But what's funny in this context is that the cat is actually security. So developers are choking us out. So we don't need to make any more enemies than we already have in security. We know threat landscapes change daily, if not hourly. So we need to make sure that we have everyone on our side in our organization, because we are all on the same team. We are all trying to do the same thing, hopefully. And if we don't, we create insider threats. What I mean by insider threats is that your developers will hide things from you. You will have vulnerabilities and potential exploits in your system that you don't know about. And that is an insider threat, if not by intention, then by impact. So that is one of the biggest things that I've learned recently. It's that if developers feel like they have to hide from you, then they are creating threats inside your organization. There's also the idea of abandon, try harder. I think that's the OSCP's motto. But when developers hear that, they often hear, I'm not doing my job well enough, and that's an insult. So if you say, instead of try harder, you offer resources and you teach and not scorn them for asking questions and asking for your assistance, that will make a huge difference, and that will open a lot of conversations. So then hopefully we'll move from this, why does security hate me? And why don't devs listen to us? We'll move to this like lovely purple shade in the middle. So I've told you all these things that I do, but I didn't necessarily say how, like what works in an organization. So here are some examples of what actually works and what I've seen personally. Security advocates are huge because they do your work for you. Please get security advocates. If you have devs on dev teams that care about security and talk to you and like want to learn more about security, my God, embrace that and then send them off to their teams and they will do your work for you. They will show people how MFA works and then other people will listen to them because they're a dev. You don't have to do anything. It's awesome. So do that maybe. Transparency is super huge. If you're going to block someone from doing something, tell them why. Like I think Karen Liu's talk on security logging yesterday, in the era of GDPR, she talked about sensitive data that you cannot log under any circumstance. And if I were a dev and I was being told you can't log that, why can't I log that? Like just tell me why and then I won't do it. And then I'll make sure that in the future I don't do that too. Individual and team engagement, we kind of talked about that earlier. Seeing real life impact is another big one. I really like to show devs how a vulnerability works because then they see that work and they go, oh God, no, and then they never do it again. It's awesome. Or if they do it again, then if you tell them again, they're like, ah, and then they freak out and it's great. The last one is shadowing programs. Within reason, see if you can get them to sit with you. And I say that because as much as we need to see what developers are doing, they need to see what we're doing as well. They need to see what data we see. We need to see what endpoints they need to know about. Sharing that information and letting everyone kind of sit with each other is a huge education point for that. But I do have to put a disclaimer out there that your mileage may vary with any of these things. If you have a security program that you think is mature and works, and your devs think it works, cool, don't listen to me. Do what you need to do. Your organization is different. Don't drop everything just because you see this on a slide. So why do these work? You're engaging with devs on their level. You're investing in them. You are getting street cred among them so that you're building trust, so that when you tell them to do weird, hard stuff in the future, they actually listen to you and they're not like super pissed about it. Like they might be a little pissed, but not like super. And then you're investing in them. And investing in your devs as a security team is pretty much doing half of your work. So we have Alien Vault here today, right? Do we have Alien Vault people in the room? No? Okay, that's cool. They're one of our sponsors. They gave us food, so we have to love them. So a lot of organizations, especially bigger organizations, kind of talk about like how mature their like SRE security stuff is. But like Alien Vault's a really interesting example because they're a little bit smaller than like Google, and they have things like management being accessible and approachable. So to have leadership be accessible and approachable means that all leadership kind of needs to know about security. That's cool, because then when your developers are like, I have a security question, if the manager doesn't know, at least they know where to find it. Security culture as habit, so just making it part of their routine, that's non-invasive, that's team engagement, that's super cool. And then keeping training sessions brief. This is my favorite takeaway about Alien Vault because they know that security is scary and dangerous. And if you aren't used to security, it's really overwhelming. I was in a bar in a hotel once, and naturally, like this is the kind of person I am, I started telling a dude about have I been pwned. And he was like, I don't want to know. Literally, do not search my email. I do not want to know. And I was like, why not? And he was like, because then I'd have to do something about it. And I was like, that's real. but like security is scary if you're not used to it. So keeping sessions brief so people don't get overwhelmed, also really important. My God, I wish this were easy. Like I wish these were easy changes to make. Do we have any Legally Blonde fans in the room? I see, yes, thank you. So if you don't know Legally Blonde, watch it. So this is Elle Woods, and she got into Harvard studying while she was like running on a treadmill. I love her so much. But in this case, it's, you fixed your entire security culture? What, like it's hard? It's gonna be hard. We're gonna have some challenges. You've likely seen these in your day-to-day work. There's some friction behind security and developers that's just kind of been historically there. That's not super rare. We see that in a lot of organizations. So you're gonna have that friction deal with like previous relationships. We're also gonna deal with communication barriers if we have to go through like 30 bureaucratic steps to talk to any given team or like get anything done or make a meeting or 6 meetings to talk about one thing. You know, communication barriers are real. Resources available for developers is really interesting because there aren't always a lot of great edge of future technology security things out there. So as we adapt to Kubernetes and stuff, we can see all the conference talks we want, but like every environment is different. So resources available to learn about security is super real. We look at workloads and deadlines. That's on both sides. Pace of security is super fast, so asking developers to keep up with security and also do their day jobs, that's not gonna happen. Technical background barriers is interesting for security, specifically because, like I said, a lot of people just don't know what Scrum is. And if you don't know what Scrum is, how can you expect your developers to like prioritize things properly? You need to meet them on their side too. The interesting last ones in security are the resistance and inability to change and unwilling managers because of like heavy workloads or just things I've noticed is that every so often you'll get a manager that's been in security for like 50 years and you can't tell them anything. You're like, here's this thing that we should be doing to secure a cloud environment. And the person's like, I've been doing this since I was 15 in my dad's garage. You can't tell me how to do my job. That's super real. You'll meet those people and it's terrible. But those people, like that's something that they have to adapt to. It's something that we move forward in the future with. And if we don't adapt to the future, we will be left behind. So that's an interesting challenge in security. So with those challenges, why should I care? Why should I do these things? If I haven't explained it well enough already, this is a cat and all of her kittens watching a chipmunk, by the way. In case you can't see the chipmunk, I couldn't at first. 0 days in security best practices. I don't care. Give me the vulnerabilities. So why should I care? Security industry is kind of borked. It's kind of wildly broken. If we look at just recent security vulnerabilities, like even Nord got broken the other day. Like they're a VPN. But if we look at like all of these things. We look at like how culture is a leading difficulty. At my university near me, we have the security team that when IT, like help desk level 1 people ask for help, they go, try harder. The last statistic on here, I'm a little skeptical of because that is a phishing report by a phishing company. And I don't know if that's necessarily peer-reviewed, to put it that way. But it seems fair that a lot of cyber attacks at least start with a phishing email. So security is kind of borked, and that's why we should care. In order to unbork the future, my goal is that accessibility, empathy, and friendship, the power of friendship, kind of, like not being their enemy, will make that difference, and that'll be really important to us. And I'm excited to make that difference with you. And that is all I have for you on this lovely Friday morning.